When you're ready.
Are we set? Well, let's go. Good evening, everyone. This is Council Vice President Darrell Volt presiding this evening. I'd like to call our council whole meeting to order. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Member Revolt.
Present.
Member Stroya.
Here.
Member Soretta.
Soretta's here.
Member Foltz.
Here.
Member Fonte.
Here.
Member Warren.
Here.
And Member Peters could not join us today. 6 present.
Very good. Thank you. May I have a motion to excuse Member Peters?
Warren second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Very good. Let's move on to our agenda. The first item is community economic development. Our second century zoning went to the Planning Commission for a discussion. You have before you a capture of those discussion points. Planning Commission Chairman Jamie McLeister is on with us tonight if we have any questions for him. But what we tried to do was capture the items that came up at the Planning Commission meeting. The Planning Commission did approve the document, but it had some suggestions. And so what I'd like to do tonight is to roll through these to determine whether council wishes to make any further amendments to the existing document. Let me preface that action by a reminder that the goal of our zoning amendment, our zoning plan, is to promote a higher level of commercial activity on Main Street. And our objective is to increase property tax values and the number of jobs. And as we've often discussed, what we're trying to do is maximize the use of commercially zoned property, a space that is not likely in the future to grow given the proximity to residential neighborhoods. So having said that, let's begin. The first item that came up was a question about adding hotels and funeral homes to the Main Street Center district. I don't believe that those are good permitted uses. Funeral homes tend to require a fair amount of real estate for parking, etc. We have had a funeral home in the Central District, and it had parking issues. Correspondingly, I'm not sure that hotels at this time are desirable for a variety of reasons. But to wit, if a hotel is permitted, it is built and is unsuccessful, it really creates a burden on the community to find a second use or another use for that site. So is there anyone who would like to add anything to that or take a contrary view? And Patrick and the mayor, please go ahead and let Don, before we go, let me ask the administration, I guess, if it wants to weigh in.
Yeah, I would stand to agree with that premise that it's not really a good maximizing use of the limited commercial space. I mean, if we look to other communities around here in Stark County in which they've had, say, funeral homes in the downtown area, eventually they've all been pushed out. In Massillon, Arnold used to be downtown, got pushed out to Wales Road, and there used to be one in downtown Canton, Lewis. They just can't compete with the nature of the types of funerals these days, and as a result, it's just a huge amount of space. And you take a look at the one we got over on Pittsburgh with Reed. Huge amount of space. I can't imagine that space on Main Street. And there's not really a lot of jobs that go with it. And then on the hotels, it's the same story. I mean, we don't have to look much further than downtown Canton and see that, over the last 30 years, how they've struggled, to keep, some type of a hotel down there. And, were it not for in the early days of, some of the more established companies reserving entire floors and keeping it open, or, the Hall of Fame of late, it begs the question of whether or not it can really survive. And then you look at here in proximity to Belton Village. I mean, that's really where the hotel action is. And so we don't think that it would be an appropriate use.
Okay, let's turn it over to Council Dominic. I think you're first up. Am I correct?
Okay, so I'm good with what you were saying. I mean, the only place you can have a hotel is in the Hoover District, but again, that's not.
Wait, Dominic,
Yo,
I'm having trouble understanding you, hearing you.
here, hold on one sec. So, can you hear me? It's Dominic.
Yes.
That's better.
Okay, sorry about that.
Thank you.
What I was suggesting is the funeral parlor, I agree with. There's a small funeral home, South Main, Verbal, at Vrabel. I think that's how you pronounce it, Vrabel.
Vrabel. Yeah.
Yep. And then, of course, the one on, the one that takes up the big parking space over there on Pittsburgh. So, yeah, I agree with that. And as far as the hotel goes, to do a fresh space, that would take up a good bit of real estate as well, unless they, retrofitted the residential into that where the Hoover District was, But other than that, I agree with those items.
Yeah. Dominic, this is Daryl again. As I told Jamie in a side conversation that we had, this is, while we're trying to set some guidelines for development in the community, this is not cast in stone. So if a really good opportunity would come up down the road, you can always bring it back and change it. And it can be done with some speed. So, okay, let's move on. Is there anyone else who wants to weigh in on the hotel funeral home issue? Okay, we're going to leave that out then if I don't hear anything else. On 1136, 0.09 design standards, the Planning Commission asked us to consider a provision for permitting similar looking materials to the natural materials that we specified. In other words, there are architectural products that are as good as natural. How does council feel about that? Or excuse me, let me go to the administration first and then council.
I think it's a good suggestion.
Okay.
I think it ties into the spirit of what I think I had heard from member Soretta. We talked about the fencing type of thing, but as it applies to buildings, that would be an appropriate. There could be an appropriate substitute, natural looking.
Okay.
Daryl, Mayor Wells.
Yes, Mayor.
I think we're looking for is a sense of consistency with the facades and the building structures. I think that is the spirit of what we're trying to look at here. And so I would agree that if there's quality and similar building materials that will, stay with kind of the theme that we have along Main Street here, I think that's appropriate.
Okay. Very good. Council? Mark?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it was a good suggestion they made. It like Pat said, it does go along with, it doesn't have to be truly wrought iron. It could be something that looks like that. It's less expensive. There are a lot of different facade stones that aren't really stone, but they look just like stone. So when we say stone, that pushes the cost up. So similar looking material, there's some new stuff that's on there they mentioned. So I think that's a really good idea. I do think though that we need to do a little better job of coming together on, and when we talked about this, what are we suggesting to try to keep our theme, especially in the center stage of the of the whole district, the center district. We want to call it
Yeah.
historic district. So I know we went down through this, but how do we get people to look at these suggestions and, possibly, do these things? And that's another conversation. We don't need to have that now.
Yeah.
But you have that right in front of you here, all these yellow things. And I understand it when we say Hoover brick, when we say natural cut stone, okay, that can be, kind of open. There's the Hoover brick is an actual color, actually, but natural cut stone, there's a lot of different kinds of stone that look natural, and different masonry kind of things. So we probably need to get a better hold of this. This is a good list here. I'm not going to sit here and go down through the whole thing, but that's my comments on that.
Mark, it's Dom. It's Dominic Fonte. Mark.
I know.
So you know how they have like a Hardy backer board and Wonder board and different things that looks like real wood or cedar, and then they have the fiberglass product, 5-pon or whatever they want to call it, that people use for trim, and it's maintenance free. It's a poly product, but it looks really good. So yeah, I agree. So a lot of times what they would do is what's called an architectural review board, or have like somebody that's a little handy on the staff or contracted to sort of like make these decisions so that it's not so literal. We need to have that wiggle room, like you said, with the cut stone being not real stone or real wrought iron, but the look-alike stuff to help the people trying to construct these things to save money and also keep the aesthetics of the city like what we want.
Yeah.
Hey, let's do this then, Marty and the administration. If you would add some language and work with Ben to add some language that permits design standards similar to natural materials. If we could get some language included there, that would be helpful. So I guess we're kind of a yes, and then we'll circle back.
I
That
think
draft
that's in there,
language is on
Darryl.
page 11 of your packet.
Okay, very good. All right. Hang on.
I think that's smart because there's new things that come out. It seems like every other year. So if you say it like you just said it, Darryl, natural, I think that kind of covers a lot.
Well, let me ask you a question. If this is drafted on item 6, do you want wood grain textured vinyl siding?
I don't know that specifically needs to be in there because there could be something
That's
is
on
more
trim.
encompassing that.
Yeah.
It's
That's
trim
Okay, that's the
material.
trim part.
You
Yeah.
gotta read the whole thing.
I am.
front elevation.
They have good products, guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then we'll just let's insert this language then. If everybody's comfortable with it, let's use it.
Yep. Sounds good.
Okay, let's move on to 113611. This was a parking question. Thank you, Ben. There was a concern about parking and not using or not specifying sort of minimum required parking. In the course of the discussion, I think what we have tried to avoid is an arbitrary number of parking spots. As you drive around town, particularly on Main Street, you'll notice that there's a huge amount of unused asphalt. Those spots were required. They're unused. It's wasting space that could be used for something else. So kind of my take on it is I think we should leave it to the property owner to make that determination. Administration, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, Darryl, I spent a lot of time driving up and down Main Street and, again, just doing it over the weekend. And I would concur it to me, at times, Main Street looks like a giant parking lot with some incidental businesses on it. And it really should be kind of the other way around. And I do believe that we've gotten ourselves into a situation where we've over-regulated the amount of parking necessary because of some arbitrary biased number that we had. And we don't know how many parking spots is needed for the North Canton shoe repair. or for Pabs or for whoever. But I know one thing is that if it, the market will decide how much space is needed, and if it's insufficient and to the point that the business can't survive, then the business has to relocate. That's the idea. They've outgrown their space. They move on. I agree that there's a lot more uses that could be provided for some of this empty space, and to the extent that when these lots are bought and consolidated and made into something else, I think this is where that will come into play. Nothing will really change on the existing footprint as it is. It's the idea that going forward, if we have the redevelopment that occurs, that we can start to take that into account. But for the most part, it's not going to change until redevelopment occurs.
Right. And candidly, Pat, it may allow, and I think, for example, of the Acme site on North Main Street, the site on South Main that includes Rose. I mean, as I look at those sites, there's room for other buildings on those properties.
Yeah.
And there would still be adequate parking.
To just kind of piggyback on Pat there, I totally agree with that. I think maybe by doing this too, maybe it will help our businesses work with their neighboring businesses a little bit more. I mean, there are businesses that are open in the daytime and they're closed in the evening, right next to businesses that are very busy in the evening. Well, let's have them make, some kind of agreement to share the parking in the afternoons when no one's around. That's what a community is about. You bring in business, not everybody's concerned about their particular property parking kind of thing, but it's as long as it doesn't interfere during their business hours, I think that would be a more of a community kind of feeling.
It just
That's an excellent. Yeah.
Dominic?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Mark's right what he's saying. It's just that everybody's too happy and afraid, so you just have to have hold harmless agreements.
Okay. Anyone else?
Supply and demand. I agree. I mean, who knows better about the parking situation than the person that's going to run the business? That's what I think is pretty common sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Stephanie. I agree. Same thing. Not going to repeat it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we'll let that one lie. Hey, I just want to say one thing. We had I think Mark was on, and maybe Matt was on. We had a really great conversation with Planning Commission on this, and there were a lot of great ideas kicked around and everything. And so I'm grateful, because the wonderful thing about the Planning Commission doing this is it was a second set of eyes that hadn't been part of the original conversation, and I think it was just a healthy process. So having said that, let's move on to 113617. This involves the use of the word decal and what kind of signage we want on a window and how much of the window can be consumed by that sign. So do we have any thoughts about this? Pat?
Yeah, I think it should be removed. I think I'm not sure how it may have just been an accidental slip by, but we know that in plazas that have a door that leads in or whatever, that they need something on their door, and if to call it a decal or whatever, and restrict that so that it's practically unreadable, even from standing 20 feet away or something. That seems kind of onerous. So we would be okay with that.
Okay, so let's remove the word decal, and we'll see what happens then. Let's move on to anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Just that I think Mayor Wilder here, I just think that, business owners should have the opportunity to put their name on their window or their door, in a legible, way. If it's, doctor's office, then they should have that opportunity to have their name plainly seen. So we're talking basically about lettering.
I agree with the mayor. Like, basically, when you're walking up and down a plaza or up the sidewalk, not necessarily from the parking lot, but when you pull in parking space, get out and walk along, you want to be able to read that. You're not going to read it from the back, parking lot. I think you want to be real business friendly, but let them feel like they're doing what they can to get the exposure out on what their hours are. Now you might want to put a size, like it has to be 1 inch or something like that, I guess.
Okay, so we'll go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, get rid of the decal.
Yep. Okay. Very good. Let's move on to 113617, freestanding signs for enter and exit. I think, and I'm going to rely on Pat here, but the fact of the matter is enter and exit signs are not considered freestanding signs.
Yeah, directional signage. This is more like traffic signage.
Yes.
Trying to enter here or loading docks this way, or, the idea is with that is to try to make sure that there isn't some sort of confusion in a traffic pattern that causes a backup on a street or causes somebody to go a wrong way. And I guess, I would liken it to, say, out at the Little Leagues, we recently followed up on the request, from the mayor and the council regarding that additional drive throughput to the adjoining field. And if that was a private business and we put a sign there that says, at the bottom of that pull-in, additional parking with an arrow this way, that's a directional sign. I'm not sure why why you want to get permission for that. Making that conditional.
I agree.
Okay, so we're going to take no action. Does anyone have anything to add on that, Mark, or anyone else?
No, I agree with Pat.
Yeah. So when you see like that sign you're discussing, you don't mean the ones like in front of a business, like a sandwich board or something.
No.
No, we're talking about directional signage.
We're talking about directional signs.
Okay. Very good. Thanks.
Okay, so we'll take no action on that. 1136-17-6 monument signs. We had a request to add as a permitted use a monument sign in the Main Street Center. Make it conditional. That's important. Conditional for large developments. I think in listening to the discussion at the Planning Commission, I understand the wisdom of doing this. I believe, and I don't want to put words in the administration's mouth, but I think the administration understands the wisdom of it.
Yeah, I would caveat it by saying, though, that a lot of this is, it's not so much what the business wants and what the council or administration would allow. It's going to be what the property owner wants to allow is going to be more of a determinant there. But I agree with you that for such a large development, that is fine.
Yeah, I agree.
Does anyone have anything to add? And again, this is just in the Main Street Center.
Mm-hmm. Good suggestion. I agree with you.
Okay, well, we will make that change then. We have a 1136-17 signs in general. The Planning Commission thought that the Main Street Center should not have electronic signs. The reality is we've got them already. We've got a couple churches that have them. And I don't, pardon?
And a realtor.
And a realtor. So I'm not sure that we necessarily want to, we want to eliminate them on the Main Street corridor. I'm sorry, I said Main Street Center, or in the Main Street Center.
So are you saying, Daryl, you're allowing them or not allowing them? What are you saying?
We will allow them. We will allow them.
Thank you.
If I may,
we went through. We went through. I would remind council we went through a large exercise to help the church on South Main finally get their sign up, and it was a huge lift to get it done. And I think we haven't had any complaints about it, and it reflects the sort of modern way the churches communicate.
Mm-hmm. I think in one of the other sign things, though, I don't think we took it out. I don't believe. I mentioned it at the Planning Commission that we only allow signs so high anyways. And we only allow a certain percentage of that height and width to be electronic. So this doesn't mean you can have one big, huge electric sign, if I'm not mistaken. It has to be a percentage of the actual sign. Am I mistaken on that?
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Mark.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So it can't just be, so those people who are getting
You're right.
starting to get all upset and everything because we don't want these signs. It'll be a percentage of the electronics of the total sign, which in essence it can't be very big because we only allow so many signs to be so big anyways.
Right. Okay. Anyone have anything else to add? Contrary view? So I think we are going to set that aside. 113621 recommended design. I think what we were looking for was we wanted to encourage people, and this goes to Mark's earlier point, we wanted them to pay attention to aesthetics without requiring it. Does that capture it, Mark?
Yeah, it's very hard. And I think everybody agrees that just put down your foot on what you should have. That's not us, but we should be suggesting what we want to be. We surely don't, and I mentioned this before, we surely don't want a big orange building right downtown next to the YMCA, and we don't want silver brick or stone somewhere. We want to try to keep the aesthetics, especially again, of the central kind of historic area. So somehow we need to come up with a better way to have this suggested by our folks. And if we even have to get to a point where we give them some incentives to get to there, very small, I think that's going to go a long way in our future and be worth it.
Well, I think, Mark, you put your finger on it, and that's subject for another conversation after this is done. But we can incentivize facades. In other words, we can help in some fashion with a facade that we approve, that meets our design aesthetics, and those that don't are ineligible.
These
Any other
changes
comments?
got
I don't want
rolled
to be the one
into.
talking about this.
Go ahead, Ben.
These changes got rolled into the new draft language for 1136.09.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, we'll go back and take a look. So we won't take any further action on that then. The only other item that came up was to consider establishing a scheduled review for the zoning ordinance. One of the suggestions was that we link it to the 10-year review of the master plan. But you can review the thing anytime you want, just not 10 years.
We probably should make us a high suggestion of how many years, though, somewhere down the line, instead of leaving it up to this actually should be in the master plan, to be honest with you, to do this kind of thing, to keep, the certain areas where they are as far as aesthetics. But we probably shouldn't just leave it open to review it. We should probably have a 3 to 5 year kind of thing that we must do it, just so and it's just my opinion. I'm just throwing.
I like that. I like that too, Mark. I think things change just way too quickly with the way development's been happening.
Yeah.
And it just is a good reminder for everybody. Keeps in the forefront.
Yeah.
Hey, here's the thing. This has taken 3 years because we waited too long. That's the bottom line. It could be a lot easier to make amendments and changes if we check it every 3 to 5 instead of every 20.
All right. Why don't we do this then? What's your pick? 3 or 5?
3.
I got 1, 3.
3.
I think 3 as well.
Yeah, it's just a review. It's not like they're going to change everything.
Well, that's right. And here's the other thing too: is that that'll get you through an election and a half. So that's okay.
Well, and I like the fact too that you have maybe different eyes on it.
That absolutely.
So and the same with planning.
Good point.
Yes. And again, I come back to the conversation with the Planning Commission. I thought it was good. Obviously, as you can see from our tally sheet, we didn't agree with everything that came up at the Planning Commission. But again, this was a whole range of suggestions that came up from the members of the commission, which I thought was, very helpful. So if you do it every 36 months, it engages your Planning Commission. It gives it another purpose to exist.
Yep.
And okay. So 3's the number, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Daryl?
Yes.
Mayor Wilder. So what I can do is I can suggest to the 2021 Master Plan Steering Committee. This is one of your suggestions from council that you would like to have this included in part of that master plan. To try to review that every 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll
Very
share,
good.
I'll share that with the committee. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And again, I think to Stephanie's point, I mean, things happen. I think it's just good to, and I think the other thing is that for new members of council, you're going to have new members of your planning commission. This is a good exercise for their instruction. It helps familiarize them with what's there, what the rationale is, et cetera. It's not a bad idea. Okay, Ben, I think we're done with that part. Okay, finance and property, Mrs. Warren.
Okay, so we met last Friday and we all voted to send it to the auditor. And if you looked at the attachments that came, those numbers are in, and it showed how they calculated them. And I think those were the first 4 sheets. And then on the next ones, maybe 6, I can't remember, it gave the actual ballot language. So I don't know, Gina, would you like to say anything else about those, or Pat?
Yeah, I think, do we have this, Gina, are we going to do the slides in regards to following back up from the previous committee of the whole when we had some outstanding questions that we wanted to address, or do you want me to just talk about what Stephanie just talked about? I'm not quite sure.
I think we can do both.
Okay.
I think we should probably address both. Go ahead.
Right. Well, I think we appreciate council's assistance in getting the right ballot language, the right request, I should say, the right request to the auditor on what we wanted them to calculate. And so we learned something really important on this. And this is, kind of the value of having a good partner at the county auditor's office with Alan Harold and John Oates down there. But it also goes to, talk about, the value of institutional knowledge. And we know we've gone through a lot of change in the last couple of years. And so we may have missed that, or those before us may not have had that either. So basically what we learned in this modification that we made was that there's a value to taxpayers for leaving the levies of a certain vintage years on the books, even though they don't quite optimize based on current property values. The vantage for the taxpayer is that because the levy is of a certain age, it's subsidized by the state of Ohio. So certain residents will pay less because the state of Ohio is going to kick in their share on the the homestead exemption kind of thing. So that's a good thing. And so we've had the modifications done so that we're only asking for what we need and that we can make sure that we don't miss on that state subsidy for the taxpayers. Regardless of all that, though, it still leaves us where we were before, which is that, we're short on funds for operating these 2 departments, fire and EMS. So that doesn't change that. I think at the last meeting, or one of the last meetings, we had to do some follow-up on some specific questions, and it related to, what looked to be like a spike in 2020 and perhaps going into 2021, that it might still be elevated. So we're going to get to that. But first, we would say, what will the levies be used for? Both levies are going to be for operating costs, which would be, personnel, supplies, uniforms, gear, gasoline, vehicle maintenance, training, fire prevention programs. That's, some top bullet points. It's operating an entire department. So there's all kinds of line items that go in those budgets, as you're well aware. The levies will not support major capital improvements, such as the purchase of new fire engines or ambulances. These expenses will still come from the city's capital improvement budget. And grants do not support operating costs. Sometimes we get grants, as you know, for various capital things. City Council just approved one this year for the exhaust ventilation system that was installed at one of the fire stations. We received a grant for that from FEMA that paid for nearly 100% of that. Next slide. There were some questions as well about the, looking back, here we're going to look back 10 years to kind of see, how many fire/EMS runs there are over time. And, there is you can draw this line. That would be one way to look at it. I kind of take a look and, look at those first 4 years in 11, 12, 13, and 14. And, for the most part, we averaged less than 2,500. But, you take a look at the most recent 4 years, and we're not even remotely close to 2,500. You can see that the spread on the graph is by 500 increments. So what looks to be kind of orderly is really, some significant increases. 2020, we did see a reduction there. So, obviously we did transport and do things related to COVID, but for the most part, there were less people out. So there were perhaps less accidents and, less, incidental occurrences where EMS or fire may have to respond. So we did see that reduction slightly in 2020, but still at 2,800. So this is significant. And as we look towards, continued, aging of our community, those numbers will probably continue trending up. And I was surprised, Ben Young corrected me on something. I thought, the stereotype is we're an aging city or aging, demographic within the city. And the, above 60-year-old group isn't as large as I thought it was. But as much as we are making this city such a great place to stay, we will likely all age in place here. And so we may become a bigger demographic as time goes on, unless we're able to do what we've been doing, what council's been doing here with the economic development and zoning and doing all the things to try to bring in, a younger clientele. Next slide. So in spite of the runs increasing in volume, the chief has been trying his darndest to keep those costs per run down over time. Now, of course, it's a little bit misleading in the sense that it makes it sound like we have total control over the costs. We don't. It all depends on what the nature of the call is. So, if we go through, a period where, we saw the runs down in 2020, but we look at the costs are up. Well, it's all that, there's all kinds of additional things that we have to do. We have to bring, we don't know what we're going to run into when we get there. And the use of PPP equipment or just all kinds of other things that go into place that, saw a run up in 2020. But for the most part, the chief has been doing a very good job of trying to keep that cost on a downward slope. But it is a volume game. So although we're able to keep the number down, times the number of runs that are increasing, it becomes an increasingly large number for us. Next slide. Okay, so another thing that we've been able to accomplish, and this goes back 10 years. It's nothing related to the current occupants of the elected officialdom or appointed dumb. This goes back a long time, and we look back to 2011 and our fire and EMS full-time equivalents. For overtime was at 38, and we've been able to bring that down to 25.5. So that's a good trend. We like that trend, and it's been fairly stable since 2015 in that regard. All right, so when we talk about, that we're short, and why that really affects everything is that when we are short, we have to take money from the general fund to subsidize this. And to that extent, this is a picture on the left of what the total general fund is when you see, 2% goes to road paving, 3% to capital improvement, fire and EMS 8%, everything else 87%. When you look at the pie chart on the right, we're trying to break down the everything else, that 87%, how is that broke up? And so, the more that fire and EMS consume from the general fund, that just leaves less in the general fund to take care of the other things. We all know that we don't feel that, we're as competitive as we once were in the park and rec department. We're working on that. But, even in the road, just the general road paving, talking, in the last week or two with our engineer, who has a real good handle on the streets are out there. And, as I go out with him, the amount that we allocate towards that, really needs to be, moved up to address, some of the long-term ongoing maintenance things. Things like curb and gutter. I don't think we can't, it's hard pressed to find a curb and gutter project that we've done recently, or a number of them consistently. So there's a lot of that can be done all throughout the city, but it all requires additional funding. And so I think the thrust of what I was hoping that we would end up doing is that there would be agreement on that is, sharing with the community what it does cost to run a department and asking them, hey, this is what it costs. Do you want to support that in this current environment? And that gets on the ballot, and then the voters tell us whether they think we're doing a good job in that department or not. But so you see that fire and EMS 8%, and then everything else is divvied up out of the everything else portion. So if we can go to the next slide.
That was our last additional slide.
Oh, that was the last slide. So I think one of the things that I believe Member Soretta had asked the last time was when we were looking at, I thought we had a slide on it, but or there was some numbers on it. But in 2021, I guess the bottom line was we saw this spike. And I wanted to address, where the vast majority of that spike is. And it has to do with just a government accounting mechanism. When we receive in large grants, like we have been, we have to receipt those in, and then at some point we expend them out. So like this year, we received $250,000 in grant in 2021 to do that ventilation exhaust system. And then in 2020, there was also we had $300,000 in grants, and then $267,000 in necessary accounting for repaying those grant liabilities. So that's where the vast majority of it came from. But we are being totally transparent here. We have asked for 2 new positions. A battalion chief and a fire inspector. We're, in the process of, moving that forward. We've done necessary testing, and, we'll be going through the interviews and that kind of thing. But we did hire the fire inspector. That was a promotion, as it turned out, from within. So the idea is that when we have these guys who are close to retirement retire, that we have somebody that can step into their position. So the battalion chief is $67,000. This is going to be the all-in cost for benefits and everything. This is accounting for 1/2 comes in fire, the other half comes in EMS. And then a fire inspector with all the benefits is around 82,000. And then also included in 2021 was a $70,000 for capital expenditure for one of the service vehicles, chase vehicles. And I think somebody was going to say something, and I cut him off.
Steph, you want to take some questions?
Sure.
Regina?
Yeah, Regina, did you want to follow up with anything?
No, I think that covered everything. I was trying to take some notes and make sure we answered all the questions that we had written down, and I think we touched on all the stuff.
Yeah.
If I
Are there
may
any
say-
other questions?
Sure, Stephanie, yes, Mayor
Sure.
Wilder. Just a general comment. I know when I came into office, I challenged Mr. DiOrio and Ms. Alabac to look at our funding for the fire department. How best can we help them out, but also, how we can better serve the community. And I think we're all very fortunate. We've become accustomed to the quality service that the fire and EMS provides for our citizens. And I think over time, we have been very aggressive in trying to get grants to help offset costs for a number of things, as Mr. DiOrio alluded to, whether it's equipment or other things. But I know this is a challenge for our community. And but this is one that we need to present to our citizens and to our residents, that we want to maintain a quality first responder, for our community. And I know this is challenging for a lot of us, but we had to look at the funding of this. And I think what Ms. Alabac has presented to us and Mr. DiOrio is a chance for sustainability for our fire department, and brings it into balance for our expenditures and also the quality of service that we come to provide for our community. So thank you for just sharing my thoughts on that.
Thank you. Anything else?
Steph, of course, I've got a few things here.
Yeah, I love it.
Outside of the 4th of July stuff being canceled, I've probably got more calls on this over the last 5 days or since our last meeting. Not that there's a lot, but people are asking questions. And, my experience with levies is more than really what anybody should wish for, seriously. But there's a science to it. All right. Number one, you have to really feel that it will pass, and you do everything you can to get it passed. You have to truly believe that this is the right thing to do in unison for everybody. And then, along with that, you've got to show, or have we shown that we've been good stewards of the money that they've had there before? Number one. Number two is, have we cut back on any fat that's been out there? What have we done to shore up everything? We've got to show that. I'm just asking rhetorical questions right now. I'm not trying to cross-examine anybody. Some of the other things, have we considered, a couple of questions I got, have we considered a fire and police levy? Are we coming back for a police one, soon? Or, people want to know that. And the more you bring them in to ask the questions, the more you field the questions, the more you're able to answer the questions, you've covered your bases when it comes time for this thing to start getting voted on. Because too many times, and I see it in these kind of things, we put it out there hoping it will pass. And in most cases it will, because we have good services, but we really got to get behind these things. The other thing is, what will this thing cost to put on the ballot? What is it now, Gina? 20, 50 grand? What is it to put on a ballot, something like this?
12,000.
Yeah, if it's a special election, then it depends on any other ballot language or ballot issues that are on, but this would be a general election. So I don't know the exact cost for that. Again, I think the election costs are divvied up over the entities that have ballot issues. So I don't know. I don't have an estimate for that.
Okay. Ben, did you look that up for us at one point? I thought.
Yeah, when we were talking about amending the charter, I looked it up. And I mean, we're already going to incur election costs this year because we have 8 races on the ballot. So adding these two issues would essentially give us, two more slices of the proverbial pie, being the cost. But it is dependent on, how many other people are also having things. But since every municipality in the county is pretty much conducting local elections, the costs are going to be probably, I think, if I remember correctly, it was around $60 an issue is what it worked out to.
Okay, well, that's just a side thing. But getting back to this, we instead of just sitting here talking this, we need to make sure we have something out there, or maybe an open session for people to ask the questions. I know we represent the people in many ways, and we should be fielding questions. And I did. I've got a lot about why we've added all these people, and now we're asking for more money. We need to be able to answer that. And we need to be shown where we are with the funding. And she did a little bit of that tonight, which I appreciate. But why is it that we need this bad enough for them to vote and increase their pay? That's a very touchy subject. So that's all I really have on it. I think we need to really look at it.
Yeah, Mark, this is Daryl. Let me answer your question, part of the question for those who might be listening. The fact of the matter is, I think that the city has been a good steward of public money on EMS and fire. If you look at the slide that showed the full-time employees, that number has actually come down from a high of 38 before you to 25.6 in the space of 6 years. That's been reduced. Now, in terms of additional employees, the fire inspector and battalion chief, the bottom line is this. These are highly technical jobs. We cannot, if we are going to be good stewards, not have a succession plan. We have a small department. It's imperative that we identify not only someone who's got the technical skills, but the management skills as well to occupy these positions. That was the rationale for a battalion chief. We've got a retirement coming. We have a retirement coming in our fire inspector. We need to have those positions filled, and we need to have people who can do it. Otherwise, how do you run a department without a chief? Think about that a second. I don't think anybody out there would be very supportive of ignoring the fact that Chief Bacon at some point, sooner rather than later, is going to retire. What do you do? So the administration has made a recommendation. Battalion chief was the approach. It gives them an opportunity to pull somebody in, give them an opportunity to lead, groom them, evaluate them, and when that retirement occurs, hopefully put them in the spot. So I don't know.
I think I wanted to add, I think Mark made a lot of great points. A fair number of them I agree with. But I do just want to, take a trip down memory lane, and say that that myself and Laura Brown were the two people who did more for the last time that we went to the ballot for, the building levy. No one did more than the two of us. We often commented to one another, where is everybody? Where is that support? Because we were the lone wolves out there trying to make this happen. Now, what we're talking about now is an operating levy. Its premise is still the same. We have to do what Mark said, show people why this is needed, allow for that open forum. And we did that the last time when we went to the ballot. We had open forums, and I would intend to do that again. But, what we want to be careful about is that we're not really talking about levy strategies or levy campaigns here, at a public meeting. We're supposed to be talking about the essence of what we're asking for, not so much the methods in which we are going to try to convince people. So I don't think that's really an appropriate discussion.
Not appropriate.
But the message has been heard. I want Mark to know.
Okay. And I would remind everybody, this is Daryl, I'd remind everybody that all we're doing tonight is attempting to get the numbers from the auditor to an alternative
I think we have that.
approach.
We have the numbers. After council passed that last Friday, I believe it was.
Yeah, it's in the attachment. They showed
It's
how
in the
they
attachment. That's
calculated
been
them.
done. This is actually a discussion about, one of a couple of discussions that we'll have before, we need to actually put it in ordinance form to send it to the Board of Elections
Right.
to see if it can get on the ballot. And our attorneys have to work with the council clerk, with the Board of Elections, to make sure that everything is worded properly and that it communicates that intent, so that we're very clear and transparent of what the ask is, and that it's not tricky on the question. Voting no is voting yes, or that kind of craziness. We'll make sure we get it all right. But this is the first part of that discussion of actually bringing an ordinance forward to recommend it go to the ballot, and if the Board of Elections okays it, then it allows the people to decide. But there's a lot of things that have to be done, as Mr. Soretta said, between now and then. But this first part is this. We have to actually get it there.
This is almost a technical part, I would say. But then I think what you were doing, Pat and Gina, with the slides and answering the questions, it helps Mark, it helps all of us when we get those calls to start to be able to explain the story and why we need to do this. And like you said, it's up to the voters to say, do we want this as a city amenity, or are there other ways to collaborate where we aren't incurring this expense from just a city point of view, and we're working with others? I mean, that's what it's going to be left up to the people to decide. Because like the mayor said, I mean, this is tough to raise it by almost 3 times what people are paying. It's a lot. And just by that, it shows how much has been coming out of the general fund. But it is a good deal of money for the average homeowner. And that's something we need to think about how we put ourselves in a lot of people's positions like that. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, what's the cost of not doing anything? What's the no action options, Daryl? What's the no action option consequence?
Well,
I think you collaborate with others.
I've been down this road before. So to me, this is I'm going to say this is as close to a broken record as you can get. So I can go back 20 years on this, and I can go back where there was the push to, form a joint fire district. There was a joint EMS district. There was the push to privatize EMS. There was another one. We've gone through since I came back about, followed up on Chairperson Waring's request on outsourcing dispatching, or going in with someone else on dispatching. And, when it all came down to it, over the years, there are very few people that are elected officials who move towards those kinds of decisions. It always comes back to, in the end, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. And that's how we get to where we are. So we either, we have to, and the no option is what's happening now. We're running short in the revenues on it, a significant amount that we're taking it from the general fund, and then you're not able to do all the other things that you want and that we need to do. So where do we go if we don't have enough money to do the streets? Are we going to put a street levy on? Are we going to have that discussion? Are we going to raise the income tax? What are we going to do? So, no plan is not a plan. So, I mean, this is a plan, and it requires the consent of the governed to participate and to express how they feel. And, based on other operating levies that we've had in the ballot before, I think that, we've been able to gain clear direction from that. And likewise on the building levy, we've gained more direction on that. So in order to move forward, we have to go with a plan. And if the voters say, you know what, it's too much, or we don't think you're doing a great job, or, it's just not the right time in the economy. I don't feel good about spending more money. Those are all decisions that we have to accept. And then we come back with, okay, in light of that, now this is what we're recommending that we do. But I think everyone would prefer that we're able to keep the same type of system as the mayor said, and the same quality level of service that we have for, all these years and years and years.
Patrick, this is Daryl. So if I understand it, we're laying out 4 options for the community. The first is the no action option. And that is we continue to draw down on the general fund to support fire and EMS. And those costs, well, we just continue to draw down and not use and defer spending for roads and other capital improvements and other operating activities. So that's option A, just no action. Second option might be to privatize it, in which residents would be, there'd be a contract with the city, and residents would rely upon a private ambulance company for service, and then be subject to that private company's billing requirements. Third option is to create a fire district, which would give us probably less control over costs and capital expenditures, probably see, as in privatizing, some erosion in response time. And then the fourth option is to fund it. Is that a good summary?
Well said. That's what I said. You use less words.
Yeah, and I think that the fact of the matter is that what you're telling me is that historically, the city has looked at a fire district, fire EMS district, and privatization of EMS, and decided that we were better retaining control over that, our own control over that activity, where we had control over cost, personnel, equipment, and response time.
Yeah, and we're not.
Is that fair?
That's fair. I mean, we look at the joint fire district out in Canal Fulton and Lawrence Township. I mean, it's not unicorns and rainbows out there. They got a lot. You've been reading about it. They got a lot of issues with trying to form that joint fire district. So it's just, I guess what I was saying is that, and I was one of them. I was a member of council when one of these came up, and it all sounds good on paper, but when it comes down to actually make that commitment, say, you know what, we want to privatize this ambulance service. No, that was
Pat, this is Daryl. Let me ask this question. If the city goes out of the business on EMS through a fire district or through privatization and decides down the road in 3 and 5 years that this was a mistake, how challenging would it be to get restarted again?
Oh, it would be.
I mean, you'd have, I'll sort of answer the question. I mean, you'd have equipment, you'd have facilities, you'd have personnel, leadership. I think it would be just a management nightmare.
It's a one-way ticket.
So really what you're telling me is that once you move to fire district or privatization, very difficult to scramble back off the limb.
Yeah. That's why it's so hard to make the call, to make that happen, because once you go that way, you can't come back.
Daryl, Mayor Wilder, if I may, it's a 5-year plan or a 5-year levy, but I'm also thinking that many of the land purchases, property purchases that we've been making for the city, hopefully within those 5 years, we'll have property businesses developing, paying into our income tax.
Yeah, reduce the bite.
And hopefully, within a 5-year 5-year period of time. You're exactly right. It will hopefully relieve us of having to fund the fire and police under levies. I know that's hopeful is a little bit maybe unexpected, or you're not sure what to expect. But I think that was part of our philosophy was if we don't control it, somebody else will. And that was my approach and belief on some of the acquisitions we've made. And I like to see us retain our services that we've grown to appreciate, and having those trained professionals coming to our door in a matter of minutes, knowing that they're here to help. So I understand it's up to our voters, and we'll just have to leave it there. But it has my support, and going forward with this, and we'll see where the journey takes us.
Thank you. Chair Waring?
Any other questions?
Yes, Member Foltz. I've been listening, and I think this is great dialogue. I don't think we should just, finalize this tonight by any means, Stephanie. I think we have to answer some of these questions in the sense that we've been very fortunate for our residents to only have 1.5% income tax. I think we held the line years ago when Hoover left, and a lot of jobs, and we survived, and we're building on from that. But we have to explain, because I did get some calls too, the succession plan, which I think is good for the fire chief and for the fire inspector. But is that a permanent succession plan, or is that something we're going to look to see when eventual retires happen? We're not going to need those positions, so we are going to be good stewards of the taxpayers. There's the lingering thought, well, this is going to happen. Then what about the safety building? Is that coming next? Is that the next thing we're going to have to vote and approve? So there is that kind of sentiment out there. I think everybody loves what we offer as a community with our safety and our services overall. That's hands down. We've been very good with that. And, I think we have nothing but positive comments on that. But I think when it's all encompassing, to Mark's point, because I'm in the middle of renewal, now, you got to have these questions answered. We have to have the program or the levy campaign address these. And it's better to start this right now in some sense, so we can be more productive with the levy down the road. And these are all valid points. I mean, I feel fortunate that, we pay what we do in North Canton for the services received. So I don't want anybody to read more into that, but these are general questions. Some thoughts are, well, why do you spend all the money on a fire truck or an EMS unit? They do cost money. And how many fires do we have actually? Those are some of the comments. So I think it's good to talk about it more, to get our opinions, not our opinions, but our facts in line, which was started tonight as far as how to move forward with this. A lot of cities absorb police and fire now, their income tax revenue. But then again, ours is only 1.5%. That has to be stressed. If it was 2%, will we be even asking? Probably not. I don't want to say, I'm only one of 7 here discussing the points. But those are all valid questions that we have to answer. And I don't feel we should just rush this. I think we should take a little bit of time, obviously give ourselves a window to put it on the ballot, but come together comprehensively. So, we're answering these questions right now. So when the levy does occur, if we have the votes to do that, we are really working this as fast and most productive as we can.
Like Doug.
Doug, this is Troy. I want to reiterate what you just said, especially, I look at this as it addresses a shortfall. And you look at the Akrons, you look at Canton, yeah, they do absorb it, but you're talking 2.5%.
Right.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And I think, if we were up there, we probably wouldn't have to be discussing this. But, as it is now, it does clearly pull. If you looked at that slideshow, it does pull from other things. And it's not gonna get any better. Vehicles are not going to get any cheaper. The equipment that they're going to buy, what's next? We had COVID. We could have something else happen, and maybe there's not federal grants to fund that stuff. I just see a lot of shortfall, and I think to keep this level of service, that if you guys have used fire and EMS, you know what I'm talking about. It is phenomenal, and it's greatly appreciated. So
yeah, Matt, no doubt about. Yeah, Matt, no doubt about it. That was my point. I mean, we got to say we're only taxed this much here. How do we make up the difference? And what is the long-term planning for everything? You know what I mean? Because those are legitimate questions. We know government because we're in government.
Sure.
But a lot of our residents don't, and they see one thing and they don't understand, or they want more clarification of why this is going to happen this way. Yep. So that's good to have that discussion, Matt.
Good job, Doug.
And I guess I would say, and I hope that I'm not coming across this way, or that if I haven't said it, but I anticipate that we will have these open discussions. It almost sounds like you're saying that we're not going to have discussions, or if you have questions, that there's some fear that they're not going to get answered. I welcome the questions. As you get them, you can certainly call them in, and every Monday night we can review the questions that were submitted and provide the answers. And hopefully, at the end of this process, we'll have them all put together in a bullet point form or some sort of a, PowerPoint that we can show, the history of the questions. We can do all this stuff and move that dialogue forward. Of course, that only goes so far as who's paying attention in the community to what's happening at the council meeting. But, there would have to be an effort to communicate that message, as we know, outside of our Monday night domains.
Well, remember, Pat, you guys did that for the safety building. Laura would get questions and then she would put them on Facebook.
Yep, we did.
So you could do that. Well, and I think
a lot of outreach.
Right. I mean, just to be clear, we had to move it forward. We had to get the numbers, and now we can keep asking these questions.
No, Pat. Yeah.
In 2021, I know the one chart only went up to 2020 as far as the number of calls, but the number of calls in 2021 for EMS and fire, as of yesterday, is 1,013. That's through the first 4 months of the year.
Yeah.
No, Pat, you're going to run around 3,000. You're going to get close to 3,000 calls again.
Yeah. No, Pat, that wasn't my intention. My intention is just to explain, because I hear this on other fronts, other levies on how this, that's all. I know we're going to do that. I just wanted to state that so the public understands that this wasn't just decided, last month. This is something that maybe Pat, you were more aware of it, or our finance director was, administration, but it's obviously it's like the water rates. You don't want to wait to the point that we're in a situation where we're really dire to make large rate increases. I mean, this is the way to do this. You're handling it the right way, in my opinion. I didn't want to come across a different way, Pat.
Well, I appreciate that, Doug. And look, I'm not a clairvoyant here. I confess that, until we had the new finance director, the depth of this problem wasn't as apparent to me. And I've told that to members of council. All right. So given that's what it is, and it's been ongoing for some time, what is the plan? Well, somebody has to do something, and sticking our head in the sand and hoping it goes away is not going to be it. So if it means being out front and saying, yep, this came over from administration, we talked with the mayor. Mayor's said, got to think outside the box, look at everything, turn everything over, analyze how we're doing, and see how we're spending funds. And we've done that. And We'll have to demonstrate that to the community. But, we look at that, and I'm very sensitive to that because I believe in it still. I guess I'm not as cynical enough yet, but, when I sat on city council, and Doug, you were there with me, and Mayor Held at the time, in reaction to the news about, the Hoover Company was going to leave. And we were going to have, at some point, zero income from there. And, what was our two approaches? And, administration then said, we should go for the income tax hike. I opposed that. It led council on that. Not because we were opposed to raising the income tax per se, but because I felt, and I said at the time, I don't think that we've demonstrated to the community that we're good stewards of the monies and that we're just going to go ask for more money. I think we have to show that we're going to tighten our belts. We took you were president of the council, Doug. We took the last budget from the Rice administration, and we whacked that down significantly so that we wouldn't have to go so hard in the Held budget and not drop it all on that. But between those two budgets, we dropped out like 1.7 million in order to balance our budget in anticipation of that. So I'm very much a believer in showing the community that we are good stewards of the money. And we look at the job count back then was like, went to 92 employees. And if you look at where we're at now, we're probably around 95, 96 employees with, adding over a 15-year period. We've changed a lot of personnel here. We've brought in, more bang for the buck and trying to get more productivity out of people and what we ask them to do. And we have to share that story with everybody. But I believe in that. I sat where you sit, and I know how important it is to you, because it was important to me.
Yeah, Pat, I concur. That's what my point was. We're still 1.5%, but that doesn't mean, other things aren't becoming more costly to us that we eventually have to address. So that, well said. That was a good recap of everything. I appreciate that.
Well, Chair Warren, what's your pleasure this evening?
Well, I know that we want to keep moving it. Pat, do you need us to place it on the agenda for the?
I don't think we're at that point yet, Steph.
Okay.
I think we have to get the law director and the clerk to, be talking to the Board of Elections on a preliminary basis here.
Okay. Then we'll just keep it on discussion. Yeah. How about that? Is that good? So for the next committee meeting, we'll bring it up again. And if we get more calls, we'll keep answering.
We hope to have a report on what Ben and the law director have worked on in that interim. And we'll try to start, encapsulating, some type of PowerPoint with some of the questions that we know so far. And we'll just keep building it. Okay. And then you just keep us appraised of kind of the date that we need to move forward if we're to that point. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So,
that sounds great.
Chair Warren, if I understand your request and it's supported by council, is we will have this on a forthcoming committee of the whole for additional discussion.
That's what I would like.
All right. Ben, if you would be kind enough to get that on an agenda. And Pat, if this is Daryl, if you'd be good enough, maybe look at some of these, revisit a couple of the options, privatization and fire district. I'm not sure that people truly understand what a hard bill on a privatized EMS service really means in terms of dollars and cents. So maybe we could put a little personal cost to that option. Okay, very good. Now for the fun stuff, Mr. Stroya, rules and claims. Ordinance, rules and claims.
All right.
Or ordinance and rules, I'm sorry.
Okay, if you guys will go down to page 47, this is the survey. Daryl, you were part of this.
It was.
Mark, you were part of this as well. And if you guys want to take a look from 47 to, I believe, 57 are these, or 50, just 50 is 49. Those are the survey questions in the format that Ben has put together.
Ben, can we put that on the screen?
Yes, if I can jump in first here and give an overview.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Of what I'd like to do. So as I'm sure you're all aware, the city has been doing community surveys every 2 to 3 years for the past decade or so. So this would be continuing that effort to continue to gather important information to judge how we're doing, see if we're trending up, trending down, that kind of thing. So what I'd like to do for this year is to conduct the survey over the summer, which is roughly the same time frame we conducted the last survey in 2019. So this would go from May 15th to August 14th. And a new addition this year would be survey booths, where I'm standing there at a booth during community events and you can walk up and fill out your survey. So this would kick off at Market 720 and it would end with a final in-person booth at the Main Street Festival on August 14th. To that effort, there would be 3 ways to respond this year, either online through our website, either through the mail, which we are hoping to still do a direct mailer, or in person at the booths to be added this year. And then results should hopefully be available in early September. Any questions on the process before I bring up the questions?
Will there be a Main Street Festival?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's being planned, August the
Okay.
14th.
What about 4th of July? Just double checking on that one.
I'm not going to comment on that right now. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
That is not on the agenda, Tom. Talking about the survey. We did keep the comments section. That was Mark and Daryl. I think that was one of our biggest concerns.
There we go. There are the questions. So our first 3 questions are kind of our standard demographic questions that help us understand who responded. Then the rest of the first page are all of our sort of standard city service questions. So these are things that we've been asking on every survey essentially for the past decade, and we track over time how we're doing, if we're getting better, if we're getting worse.
And then this would be the first year for the Walsh questions as well, right, Ben?
Yes, so then on page 2, the beginning of page 2, the first 4 questions, question 9 through 12, are reoccurring information questions. So how do we communicate information? How do we get it out to people? Are we doing a good job? Are we doing a bad job? Again, these are things that we track over time. Questions 13 through 17 are our changing questions from year to year. So these are more policy specific questions that we want answered based on the time frame that the survey is answered in, and they're not necessarily tracked over time. As always, we have an additional comment section, and then new this year at the bottom are additional questions for Walsh students specifically, to hopefully get some additional information for that population of, are we attracting them to stay in North Canton after they graduate? Any questions or comments on the questions?
No. Ben, the Walsh student additional questions, that's great. That's what we need a barometer on for the future. It's well done to put that on.
Hey, Ben, is there a question or open space after the students say when it says daily, weekly, never visiting the Main Street district or whatever? Is there a spot there for them to fill in any recommendations they have, just so we know what the vibe is?
So this was a discussion of It was a significant discussion during the crafting of this survey. There are a lot of places and a lot of questions on the survey where we would like to, have those types of, oh, tell us more. The reality is that in computing that data, it is a lot more effort and takes up a lot more space, mailing wise, to have those types of categories in a lot of questions. So our hope would be that, they put that in the additional comments section.
Is there a spot like if you had a QR code there where they can go further if they wanted to do something, send an email to their council member or to the city, just as a kind of like a recommendation, something to take it off of that printed material for the people, because they're going to be more techie anyhow. So that's just a thought, but whatever you guys decide, I'm fine with.
Good point, Don.
So to some extent, we are space limited. So I had originally intended not to mail this out. I had intended only to do it in person and online, as some of the data from previous surveys shows that when we mail it out, we are self-selecting for a specific population and kind of losing some of the other populations we might like to hear from. But in crafting the survey, it was made clear that it is very important that we continue to mail this out. And so keeping that mailing in mind and trying to keep the survey to one page front and back, space does become a very limiting factor.
Well, I can help you with the space. Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought we wanted to can that number 17.
Yeah, we had a couple in there that I thought we worked on. We need to take a look at this, and come back a little bit, I think. Ben's done a fabulous job of squeezing this down.
You get rid of 17 as a minimum. You can move your 18 up. All that thank you for participating and all that stuff you could drop up in there. And you could move the additional questions for Walsh students up and then give them that lower left-hand corner to, freehand something in.
I recommend that. I think to get an accurate read on what the shift is happening, you need to do that, or at least let them use their smartphone to scan it and take them somewhere else to type it in.
Well, so our survey, our poster here, if you'll see on the left side, does have. So you can always fill it out online, and actually the top of the paper survey has sort of nudges people to go fill it out online. So we have the link built in here.
Yeah.
Hey, Ben, can you go back to the questions that have where you've got website, text alerts? What question was that?
10.
12.
10. Okay. Let me come back to our question about the rep. And this goes to something an observation that I've made. And this really goes to our conversation about EMS. How do people know what we're doing? I'd really be curious to know how many people are, if they're not signing up for any of this stuff in 10, and they're not a subscriber to the rep, how are we communicating with folks? I don't know the answer. I just be curious, because I think that's a public policy issue for us. We've got big issues out here, and if nobody's looking at our Facebook page and nobody's reading the rep, how are we communicating? What should we be doing? Maybe that says that we ought to have a semi-annual or
newsletter,
your newsletter or something. I don't know.
Well, as far as number 17 goes, you could just add to number 10 a sixth line that says,
that's fine.
Newspaper, public.
That's fine. Yeah, I have a subscription to the Can repository. I don't know. For the rest of council, I bored poor Ben to tears, recounting my early days on council when we had the Beacon Journal, the Canton Repository, the North Canton Sun, and WHBC all covering us. I mean, you didn't have to go out and buy anything. It just literally information was forced at you. Now, I don't know how people get information.
And to Daryl's point, my argument against adding the newspaper to question 10 is that question 10 is intended to be methods of communication that we control and we can choose to use. I guess we could choose to use, the current repository. However, buying ads to communicate policy would quickly become very expensive.
Hey, that's a bad move. The paper's out. They're a dying breed. We got to use the technology. And how they communicate now is the internet. So the internet is a big, broad base, but you got several of them checked in number 10. I'm just saying, like, if the older folks, I would say 65 and older would like it mailed to them, and they like the newsletter we used to mail to them. I'm sure they'll like that because they like holding it, touching it, and reading it. The majority of the other people are going to want to use their smartphones. 50% or more use their smartphones. So you want to integrate the technology in with the smartphone. So that's why I say at least the QR code, like they do the menus, like when we had COVID, you just take a picture of it and it comes up, so they can see everything there. So I'm just saying, use that as your technology. That's where the action is. So you got to ask the right questions if you want to get the right answers.
Yeah, there's several other ones on here. I thought we actually got rid of, to be honest with you. Like 13, what's the use of that? Yes or no? Okay. 14, do you have any issues? Well, you better have some comments under that because they're going to go to town if they have yes, and if they have no, that's nice. And I can't see 15, but I think 15 was on my list too. Ben, you want to scroll up there? That's an advertisement. Do we want an advertisement on a website or on a survey? So a couple of those I think we could probably look at and probably kind of share up and make some room.
Hey, Matt.
Yep.
Could we do this? Let's get together and make some real quick corrections to this. Maybe get it back in front of us next week. Very quickly.
Sounds good.
And because Ben's running out of time. Okay.
Yeah,
so we need to get this thing done ASAP. I'm not married to any of these questions. For that neighborhood issue, for example, I'd scrap, I could scrap 15 and put a line in there and say, what is it? I'd be curious to know.
Yeah.
15, I think we get some funds for if we put that in.
Yeah. I think we
but
do.
14,
actually.
I agree. Right. Yeah. But 14, I agree. Yeah. Let's just talk about it real quick and bring it back so we can, it's just a resolution. So we're not.
Okay. So here's,
for three votes.
So Matt, if we can do this then, let's have the resolution ready for Monday night. Let's have the revised questionnaire circulate so we can act on it Monday night. How's that sound?
Sounds perfect.
Do you want to see if you got 4 to do it that way? Is there a motion that we place this resolution on the agenda for next Monday night?
Brother moves.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, very good. Mr. Stroy, continue.
All right. So let me scroll back up here. Bear with me. Okay, Daryl and Ben, you were part of these meetings. There are several committees that no longer meet. So I'll call on the council historians to weigh in on this, since in my short 1.5 year history, none of these have actually met. So we'll start with the first one. This is the Neighbors Helping Neighbors program. Historians, can you weigh in to tell us what that was about?
Yeah, I can go through that. I think this was David Held brought this in. I was on the committee for this. This is a program designed to gather people who want to help. There was a lot of people that always come and say, listen, is there anything that people need, whether it be a church group or someone else, and we would put them on a list. And when people needed help, we would send them to that list and have them call those people. Now, the whole process is a good process. It just needs to be someone needs to have the list and someone needs to have those people call the list. That was the kind of the community good thing to do kind of thing. So that's the, and I don't know why we want to get rid of it, to be honest with you. I think it would be better off sharing it up a little bit and creating a list of people that want to help. And when people call in and they need help, or maybe an elderly person needs their leaves raked or something, we can send them or give them that number to that group and let them work on their own for that. It's kind of a city being the kind of negotiator of helping hands. And this is why it was Neighbors Helping Neighbors. So that was my historic view of it. So
is it a liability issue or something?
I don't know.
I like the concept.
Well, I think what we're doing is we're looking through all the committees that haven't met in X amount of years and bringing them up for discussion as to why they were put into place and why they're not meeting.
I don't know if there's a committee for this. This should just be a program that we conduct through City Hall, I don't know where it would go to. I always thought it went to the mayor's office. Those are the ones that field the calls. That's my recollection of it. I think we should more share it up rather than cut it out, to be honest with you.
So
the question is, go ahead.
So
Matt?
I identified all boards and commissions or groups that exist in the city, and then we sort of went through and looked at, which ones are we required to have, which ones need to be sort of improved, and which ones are not operating properly, and if they're not operating properly, do we want to correct them? So this was identified as one of the ones that is not operating properly. Currently, as written, the person in charge of this program is the chairman of the Water, Sewer, and Rubbish Committee.
He is, huh?
So,
well, thanks for letting him know. Rubbish.
And so it was one of those things that, the list doesn't exist. Nobody at City Hall really has time to, administer a program like this. So, if a council member wants to volunteer to administer this, that's fine. But as far as, paid employees and staff, full-time staff go, there are a lot of other things that we're trying to get done. That this would just be, another thing on the pile. So without additional staff, it's very unlikely that this program will function as intended.
All right, Ben, I think that's hogwash. What kind of staff do you need to have a list of people that want to help and then and put them together? Come on, guys, let's get with this. This is a good, nice program.
Let's get with it. Let's talk about people, process. And this was something created by council. Don't know if it was involved the administration or not. I wasn't here then, but if it is all it is keeping a list, and I think the council clerk can keep that now that we have a capable council clerk.
I agree.
But yeah, a lot of calls came to the administration because there were other incapable people around.
Hey, so here's a great idea. So let's say we just take a hot minute, not now, but another time soon, and we decide, like, say, Boy Scouts are always looking to do things, church groups, and then we just have, if anybody ever calls, we just have a place to put them, and then we just leave it on the website, people helping people or neighbors helping neighbors, and then from time to time we update it, and that'll pretty much, and then a little explanation of what this is about. It's to help our friendly neighbors, volunteer groups, and it could just be self-sustaining, really, once we explain what it is, and then maybe we can pitch in and make a few calls to see who wants to be on the list. And then if they want to do it, we connect them up. And when that's it, we don't have much maintenance for it, really.
I like the idea of having, I guess, certain nonprofit groups that are vetted. I think, unfortunately, we're in an era where we just can't take anybody's names to be put on that list. There's just too many. I know cases that have happened at the courts where people say they're helping an elderly neighbor, and then they go and take their money or they take their drugs out of their cabinet. So I think these organizations have to be vetted. And I think it takes more time than people realize. And I think that there's a lot of nonprofit agencies that do these things for people. I mean, I don't know why we can't use the United Way. I don't know why we can't use Goodwill.
Okay. Hey, Steph, that's a good idea. So maybe what we do is, since you know more about that, maybe we get a list of the vetted people that are already out there and just give them phone numbers. And I mean, I've done that before. Like if you have
Right.
little needs in the community, call, 211 or United
Right.
Way or, all these different, that's probably not a bad idea. And we just leave them posted because they're vetted already. And it
Yeah.
doesn't really put us in a liability issue. And these are free services that they do with whatever.
Right.
I
Or
don't
at
know,
least they have the numbers. I mean, that's why
yeah, that
211
might,
is out
Mark,
there.
That might be a way to work around it and still provide good quality services that are vetted that we don't have to like manage, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Mr. Stroya, this is Daryl. Okay, so I think, as I'm listening to this, and I think Stephanie has raised a terrific point because we really don't know what the liability we would have if we create a list that is unvetted. Can we make a referral to Goodwill or United Way? The answer is yes. So as I look at this, the question is, do we want to make referrals to Goodwill, United Way, or other acknowledged social service agencies? The answer is yes. We could have catalog. The question before us is, do you want this committee?
Does it need to exist as a committee?
That is the question before us.
There's no question it's a good program.
Right.
Do we want it to be a committee?
It doesn't have to.
What it boils down to.
It's dumb. I don't think it needs to be a committee. It can just be like basically community services to be aware of. Like this is what we do. We provide community services and educate people so they know how to get help if they need it.
Okay. Again, the question is we've created it. Dom, this is Daryl. We've created this body that apparently hasn't functioned for an extended period of time. The question is, do we want to eliminate that body? A. B is, would we like to maintain a list of acknowledged, vetted social service agencies? So if somebody calls, we can say, hey, you listen, call Goodwill, call United Way, or somebody else. So you've got two separate issues here. One is, do you want to maintain this committee or this program, which hasn't met and has no list? Just move it off, but correspondingly maintain a list of some social service agencies that we can make referrals to.
I think option B is the best. I don't think people, honestly, I think they're going to their own neighbors. I think they're going to their churches. I think they have other outreach. I don't think government's typically the place, I guess, you look for someone to rake your leaves. So if we can give them a number and move them to a different direction where those agencies are already set up, I think that's the best that we can do and manage.
Yeah, that makes sense, Stephanie.
If I may interject, Mayor Wilder. So for 19 years, we haven't had this committee or group together. I think maybe at the time it was a good idea. Maybe there was a need for that at this time. But out of necessities comes innovations. And I think the pandemic has been clear of the amount of social services that are available in Stark County through our faith-based organizations, through our schools, through your own relationships with the organizations you belong to. I think if anybody called for help, we could refer them to an agency or a group or organization that could assist them. I think Stark County's and leadership Stark, from Stephanie's point of view, leadership Stark County, there's got to be at least probably 35 or 40 agencies available that we could politely direct someone to for help. And,
oh yeah, there's 2,200 nonprofits in Stark County.
And whether it's
wow.
Rape Crisis or Coleman or again just something here locally. I'm sure it was a good idea, Mr. Soretta, when it started, and it was probably needed back then. And that's thinking outside the box. How can community help its community? But I think if we put on our website or have our services or have a list available for our administrative assistants or something, we could more than be able to assist people to connect them, even if it's Meals on Wheels. There's all these organizations that are willing to help and serve. So I guess option B is where I would think that if we could be a repository of information for people, that'd be a nice thing that we could afford for our citizens. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. I mean, I'm willing to commit some time to work on the list because I do think it's a good idea. What's the point of having it as a committee when the committee doesn't meet? It's, that shouldn't affect how good of a job it does or the information it should provide. So if somebody wants to help me, maybe a couple meetings, we can put together that list and keep it going. But
hey, Matt.
Yeah,
I can help. I probably actually have a complete list that I can gather from Leadership Star County. So
that would be great.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yep, I'll do that.
Sounds good.
I'll get you that information.
Okay, Mr. Stroy, what's your pleasure on this ordinance?
Well, just as we said, I moved to move it forward and disband it, pick Plan B there, and have it going as a program instead of a committee.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay, Serena, nay.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Let's go to the next committee. Sorry, I'm scrolling up. Okay, so this is the Community Disaster Relief Fund. When was the last time this one met, Ben? This also had some leftover funds, I believe.
I'm not sure when the last time the committee met. The account, and Gina can correct me if I'm wrong, hasn't been touched since 2013.
Okay.
Clear rules on when this money could be released were never formally adopted by council. And the amount of money left is, I don't want to say negligible, but in the event of a major disaster would not be sufficient to truly help someone rebuild their life.
Oh, no, it was $1,347.67.
I think that back, wasn't this to have to do with the Zimmer ditch issue way back when?
Sorry, Dom, what did you say? Didn't this have to do with the what?
The Zimmer ditch issue back when Schneider was in.
Let me take you through it, Dom, because I'm the one that I put this together too. This was created when the Zimmer ditch had a problem. Okay, and this was not about a committee. This was about creating a fund that was there if anything that was considered a disaster by the police department or the fire department, that folks can put money into this or donate money into this to help those people get out of whatever they were. It's kind of a small interior Red Cross thing that we kind of made. So if it was something that was within our community, and there should be, like I said, over $1,000 in there, it's not something, and we said this from the very beginning, it's not something that you're going to use unless you need it. But when you have it, people can direct funds, and I think there's a tax break in there somewhere. I don't know what the whole thing reads, that people can deposit money into this fund to help those people get out of, say their house had a fire, but the fire department chief or the police had to say it was a disaster to get this moving. And then people can apply. There's an application and everything to it. So there probably hasn't been a committee because there hasn't been no reason to have a committee, but it is a fund that's there for that reason. And there's no reason to, you don't want a ton of money in it if you're not using it, but when you do need it, that's the kind of thing you need to people to direct funds to. So that's the whole idea of it. So it sounds like Ben wants to get rid of this too, because there's no committee meeting. Is that it?
I mean, and I'm not I'm not debating, the reason for it or whatever, but I don't understand the point of having a committee that never meets. I mean, so for this committee, if I'm wrong, I don't know who's left on it, but wouldn't we have to put new people completely on this committee for it to even meet, instead of just discussing the disaster on council or in the administration?
Do we need a
Well,
committee,
so
or is the
couldn't this
program
just be a
there?
fund
It's a fund.
instead of, but so couldn't it
It's
just
a
be a
fund.
fund instead? Right. So couldn't it just, we keep it as a fund. We don't need a committee. I like the idea that if something
You do need a
happened,
committee.
but do you
need a
have,
committee.
why?
How are you going to administer the fund? Who
Well, when something
administers it?
happens,
Who processes the application?
Listen,
How do you determine the
listen.
merits?
Guys.
I am saying, and right now, maybe we don't need the committee, but when something happens, I like to Mark's point, this community rallies around things. So it's a fund there that if you want to donate, you can donate. At that point, you could get a committee together. I mean, it doesn't make sense to have a committee that's 10 years old on something that may happen in 10 years. So why couldn't it be an ad hoc committee when necessary? There are plenty of ad hoc committees.
I agree, of course.
Wouldn't it be like a line item in the budget, kind of like the flag fund or some of the other things we've done, where we don't really have to do much about it, just have it there, and then if there's ever an issue, then we address it at that
We
time?
would form the ad hoc committee.
That sounds good. Yeah, I'm not picking on these committees by, why they were designed. Honestly, I didn't even know the background story of the Neighbors Helping Neighbors one. It's a good idea, but if we're meeting as a committee, you literally have to draw up a whole new committee for it to even meet.
Right.
That just doesn't make sense to me.
Hey, Mark, this is Daryl. Let me ask you this, or Matt, let me ask you this question. Could you, as the ordinance suggests, could you repeal the committee but retain the fund as a line item? For example,
I think
like
that's a great
flags
idea.
and whatever. So
Yeah.
in other words, you've got it, it's there. It's there if you have a situation, you have an existing means or existing locations accept donations, and then you can disperse it. I think one of the things that you have mentioned, however, that should be done is you probably ought to develop some guidelines on the use of the funds.
Yeah, but we
Definitely.
don't know the guidelines at this point because we don't know the disaster or what happens.
I believe there is a whole rules to all of it. It's there. I mean, it's an application. It's what needs to be required. It needs to, like I said, the fire department or the police has to, or the mayor, I think, has to say it was a disaster, a community disaster, and then people can apply for the funding. It's all right there. It has I can probably go find it in all my past.
And hey, it may be something that we need to look at again. I mean, if it's been idle since 2013, then maybe that's something that we need to look at. A lot has changed since 2013, even with the way they apply.
It's probably a good idea.
Create the fund, retain the fund, dissolve the committee.
Line item.
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Stroya, what's your pleasure here? You're going to make a motion to do what?
Could we make a motion to amend to keep it as a line item and remove the committee?
All right. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Sreda.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Mr. Soretta, your records may be better than the council's on this matter, so you go dig around a little bit.
Yeah,
I believe they are.
I know I have it in my file. Apparently,
Cool.
All right.
Ben, there's nothing in your files of it?
So rules for dispersing the funds were discussed at least 2 council meetings, but were never actually adopted by city council. And I know that they must have been written down at some point, because in reading the minutes from one of those meetings, someone says, we have them here in front of us. That final step of a resolution or ordinance enacting them, though, never happened.
I'll bring my stuff. I'll go get it.
Okay. Mr.
Moving
Stoyer?
on.
Okay, so the next one is the Recreation Board. Ben, are there any active members of the Recreation Board?
There is one member whose term is yet to expire, and whose name I cannot pronounce, and I feel like that's what you're setting me up for.
I forgot about that.
So I will let you
Yeah. Sorry about that.
say that if you would like to hear their name.
Yeah, that is, yeah. I think it's Bruno Tremblow, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'd like to address this one. This is more of an administrative-led one. I know the council created the board, but the mayor appoints the members of the board. I've, going back, to the previous mayor as well, recommended that we not utilize this board anymore. I think that, as far as, the park and rec goes, we take that to city council. City council decides what it is that needs to go on in the parks and that type of thing. What I've seen in the use of the Park and Rec Board, of late, I can't speak to all of Councilman Foltz's history with it, but of late, the members that were appointed to it didn't show when we did have a meeting, and it turned into more of a there was a rogue element to it of looking at things, and I just feel that those things are decisions that should be made by city council. So, like if for instance, if one of the issues is to raise the rates at the pool, I don't believe in going to the Park and Rec Board and get their opinion and then come to the city council and report on their opinion. I believe it should be just going to city council, and this is what the administration, this is what our consultant says. What do you think? And then we either do it or we don't. But so it seemed to me that it's just a board that has outlived its time, given the way we are and how we're moving in the last 4 or 5 years.
Didn't it also focus on like recreational activities instead of facilities? Like
no, it was a park and recreation board.
Okay.
And there was a time when we were in recreation more than we are today. We really only run one ball field now as far as taking rentals, but there may have been a time where we actually ran baseball leagues or softball leagues.
We did
those things.
Well, Pat, to your point, Councilman Foltz, I think I go back to Kim Cooksey, which there was more of a designated person in charge of the parks. And I think Brian Hill's doing an excellent job. I don't mean it that way, but I think you had somebody that was rec programming out of the Civic Center with a staff member, and that focus seemed to shift to the administration side of things. And Kathy Farina is actually doing an excellent job as an assistant, but she's taking up some of the park, vision in that sense with you, Pat. And it does come back to council. I think it was good. Mark, I first met you on the rec board, and Susie Van Raken and people through the years. I think there was a lot of good people involved. I wouldn't consider it rogue, but I would consider it was like an advisory committee that you're right. You did bounce off. What do you guys think about raising the pool rates? And what do you think about this program or, remodeling the Civic Center at the time? And I just see through change of personnel and maybe being more efficient as administrative staff, it doesn't warrant those extra meetings. And I don't want to say that to hurt anybody's feelings. I think when citizens become involved in committees or just boards, it's important that there's input taken and discussion points made on things. I think it did work in that sense, but I think, it has morphed into more, like you said, Pat, of administrative coming to council with it. And then I have a background in it, so I'm comfortable talking about it anytime. But
well, you bring up a good point, Doug.
Yeah,
all organizations, civic organizations, have struggles these days with members, people wanting to be involved, participate. I don't care if it's you can't name an organization that doesn't struggle with meetings and memberships and issues like that on the board, and that's on ones that are really, really important. I mean, if it's the JCs or the Lions or the Rotary or whoever. I mean, those are big organizations that involve tremendous exposure in the community, and they have trouble recruiting people to be involved on their boards. And to me, this is just another one that was like, nobody came. And
so let's wrap it up.
I just think it's out. Back in the day when all those other people were on that you mentioned, that was the the golden age of community involvement. There was at one time, but we don't see it anymore.
Yeah, a couple comments on that, because when I think of parks, I think of that, and I was honored to be on that because I was on it because I was involved in it, and you want the people that are involved in it to be able to give you some advice, because we're not. We, as much as we think we are, we're on a different thing. So we do need to keep track of the people that are in the programs to get some of their advice. But what I was going with this is, whenever I think of this, I think of Doug Foltz. He led this thing. He listened to us as we were there, and our parks were better for it. Doug, and I know this has been your heart and soul, and it probably started with this, but you've done a fabulous job with this, and part of this rec board was your kind of push up, and you kind of made this. So I want to thank you for that. But I do think we need to listen to people somehow. With it doesn't have to be a board, but we need to find out the people that are involved doing it, hearing from them. And I think that's what this used to be.
Stakeholders, what people have stake in the like football, baseball, whatever it is.
Yeah, I don't know the answer. You're right, Mark. I appreciate your comments, but I think, I go back to Cooksey and his successors. It was a different format we were using, and that's changed. And,
Doug,
yeah,
this is Daryl. You're spot on. Back in the 60s and 70s, the city ran a park program. A recreation program for kids. Hired staff in the summer, ran a program out of the parks. There were a number of leagues that played on city maintained fields that were coordinated by Cooksey. There was an active seniors program that met.
Yes. Yeah.
That's all gone.
Yeah.
But all those activities were overseen by the rec board.
Yes.
It's gone. It's all gone.
To your point too, I mean, it was a big deal at the pool. Now our management of the pool is handled by the Y.
It's gone.
I mean, Pitt Cooksey was in charge of that. I mean, who's hiring staff? What's going on with concessions? We're still involved, obviously, but more of a capital end of things. Not so much the operational end of it. So
where do we go from here, gentlemen and ladies?
Well, to Mark's point, I think, as we get into if we have the opportunity to utilize these federal funds for park improvements, I think we're going to have ample opportunity to listen to the community. And I think that frankly reflects the more modern focus of where we want to go.
Daryl, that's what we have been focusing on. I mean, that is what Catherine Farina has been doing.
Absolutely.
She met with physicians, on the inclusivity playground, children with disabilities. I mean, she met with physicians, met with people from Akron Children's, therapists, the school, psychologists, everybody, all kinds of different people involved just in that particular thing, working on the playground. And then, we met with the school, we met with the Players Guild. We met with not just the high school, but the middle school, St. Paul's. When we were talking about, we wanted to build a quote unquote, a performing arts theater for children at this park. So we went to the stakeholders who would use it and asked them to help us come up with what it should be like. What is it? What's the layout? How could you use this? Would you use this? in coming up with that. And then, and of course, Akron Children's is funding it. But that, I think, is the model. I think Mark alluded to that, or directly said it. I mean, that's where we're trying to go. And as we engage, if these ARPA things play out and we're doing a dog park, a skate park, or this park, or that thing, and another, we want to reach out we want to reach out to the users, the people who know something about it, because we don't.
So the question before us, then, this is Daryl, is this is the model that you've described is really the way we should be operating. We know it's effective. Do we need a rec board? And that's the question before us. Mr. Stroy, do we need a rec board? Maybe the answer is probably no.
I understand the history of it, and I do agree, because I remember when I worked for the city, when Cooksey, I worked for Cooksey under him, and there were events. There were events at the pool. There were events on the baseball field. There were senior citizen events. I mean, all that stuff. And you're right, it's gone. So I mean, I don't see it anymore. I don't see a need for it. It would be nice to have some of those events, but who's going to run them?
So where do we go from here then?
Well, you got a motion, you got an ordinance here to eliminate the rec board. Is there a motion to put it on the agenda?
I move to eliminate it. Put it on the agenda.
Is there a second?
I do.
Second by Mr. Fonte. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay.
Okay, and the last one, Chapter 935. This is in regard to the sale of water and sanitary sewer outside the city boundaries. And this one was just really disjointed. And we're looking for an amendment on this, just to clean it up. Go ahead.
This will be in conjunction with another one that got postponed because there are some things still to work out with legal. But so ultimately what we would like to do is consolidate the water board and the ambulance board into a single billing disputes board. Because water board has two powers at the moment. It can review disputes for utility billings, and then it can also exercise the powers covered by this ordinance here in Chapter 935 for reviewing connections to outside water. So the idea is to move billing disputes into one consolidated board, and then for the reviewing of outside water connections, just leave that to administration and say, as long as you agree to our costs and our requirements, then administration can say, yes, here's your water. If you want to negotiate some sort of incentive deal for economic development or some other purpose, then you'd have to come back to council, and council would have to approve your discount or waiver of a requirement. And that would be instead of the water board looking at these things.
Historians, weigh in, please.
Historians.
That was polite.
It was polite. It was very respectful for us. All
right. Well, I'm not sure all the origins of what it is, but I know, there was initially, this, we have tried a couple of times to look at these water billing disputes. And, I think the direction over time, over history, has been to really kind of take this off of the city council agenda. I mean, this is almost like moral claims. And I think if you're bringing it back there, I think that's what it'll turn into over time.
This Councilman Foltz, Pat, I agree with that. There was nothing worse than moral ops, because, it was every individual, every, item that came before us was subject to almost a sympathy vote.
Yes.
And it just wasn't, you know, and if you did it this way this time, you're always going to do it that way. And I think it's better to clean it up and not have it come to council.
Yeah, this is Revolt. I would concur. Moral claims never really worked in front of council for the very reasons that Doug has described. Very little analysis, very little understanding. A tearful constituent usually got
you feel bad.
Got a favorable vote.
What happened, but if you solve that problem, you better solve every other one that's going to come, because that's what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I think you're better off handling it internally with internal folks. You know, ambulance claims and water.
I want to add to that, because water is a huge commodity for us. And I think when we have the ability to use it as an economic development source, I think we need to be able to use that. And I think the administration needs that at their hands to be able to move forward with that without making this a big deal. We had that before, became a big deal, and we lost out, in my opinion. So I think they need to be able to make some decisions.
Hey, Mark.
Time comes for that.
Sounds like we're at a consensus on this then. I motion to move this forward then.
Is there a second?
Soretta seconds.
All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That concludes our committee of the whole. If I can have a motion to adjourn.
Bolt's motions to adjourn.
Soretta seconds.
All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Very good. All right, let's move on to our next meeting, our special council meeting for Monday, May 3rd. Mr. Soretta or Mr. Fonte, would you like to provide us with an opening prayer?
I sure would. Lord, thank you for
Mark.
bringing us here this evening and giving us the ability to represent the wonderful people of our community and to lead in the way you want us to go. Thank you for being able to talk and discuss and even sometimes debate in a manner in which you would like to get your point across. Continue to help us be safe as we move through the future with all this pandemic and all the other issues that are occurring around us. In God's name we pray. Amen.
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 Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Member Warren?
Here.
Member Fonte?
Here.
Member Foltz?
Here.
Member Soretta?
Here.
Member Stroya?
Here.
Member Revolt?
Here.
And Member Peters is absent. 6 present.
May I have a motion to
Member
excuse?
Peters.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Soretta seconds.
All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Let's go on to the first piece of it. Our public speaks, recognition of visitors. Mr. Osborne, are you here?
I am here.
All right.
Tell me when I can start.
You may start at your convenience.
Okay, thank you. Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street, Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. At last week's April 26, 2021 Monday night City Council meeting, an amendment to Council's upcoming meeting schedule was suggested by Darrell Revolt, Chairman of Council's Community and Economic Development Committee. Mr. Revolt wished to add a special council meeting to the agenda for Monday, May 3rd, 2021, to allow for a third reading of ordinance number 2821, North Canton's designated outdoor refreshment area, commonly referred to as DORA, with a legislation to be passed on emergency. The amended meeting schedule suggested by Councilmember Revolt at 1 hour 50 seconds into last week's 2-hour meeting was subsequently voted on and approved by all members of council. On midday Friday, April 30th, 2021, 4 days after council voted to schedule a vote on the DORA legislation for tonight's meeting, I was surprised to read online in the repository that the DORA legislation had been voted on at a special council meeting held earlier that day, Friday morning at 8 a.m. Are public announcements of council's upcoming meeting scheduled to be believed or trusted? What was the rush to enact the DORA legislation? Why couldn't this DORA legislation wait 72 hours and be voted on Monday, May 3rd, 2021, as announced and agreed to by the entire council membership? Is someone at City Hall so in need of a beer to stroll on Main Street that they cannot wait 72 hours? Why can't citizens trust or believe the information that comes from North Canton City Hall? At an hour and 14 minutes into the meeting, Council's Community and Economic Committee Chairman reported that groundbreaking on the depot warehouse had taken place. This is yet another announcement that cannot be believed. What in fact is happening across the street at the former Hoover Company property is mitigation of the contamination that exists where the expansion of the warehouse is to take place in the future. For the last 6 weeks, vast quantities of contaminated soil have been excavated from Hoover and transported by trucks to a landfill in Belleville, Michigan, in an effort to clean up high levels of contamination. A March 25th, 21 report from the Hull and Associates project manager to Region 5 of the EPA states, and I quote, specifically, the cleanup plan addresses a portion of the North Yard defined as the remediation area. The investigation and cleanup of PCBs described herein is a continuation of prior remediation efforts within the North Yard by CH2M Hill on behalf of the Hoover Company and is being implemented as an interim corrective measure as executed by the US EPA and Maple Street on May 24, 2016. Anyone who is monitoring the nearly 2 months of efforts to minimize the contamination can see this is not a groundbreaking for construction. These mitigation efforts may last another 2 months. It is unnerving to this day that city officials seriously considered building a safety center on this very site a short 2 years ago when Stuart Lichtner made a self-serving offer to donate property to the city for the safety center. Lastly, Councilmember Mark Soretta remarked that owner of PAVS was in support of the DORA. What does that mean? Will PAVS be purchasing thousands of official DORA cups from the city at inflated costs so the city can recoup the expense of $9,000 for the required trash containers? As I see it playing out, of the 4 required liquor operators in North Canton's DORA, there will only be 1 liquor operator purchasing official DORA cups in lots of 500 each at $1 or more per cup. El Recon has repeatedly told me they have no interest in the DORA. PAVS has told me that the 16-ounce DORA cups are not suitable to hold the alcoholic shakes they serve. Sapphire City Board Game, in my estimation, does not have the financial wherewithal to expend $500 at a time for official DORA sippy cups, nor would the public have any desire in climbing 20 steps to their second-floor game room only to navigate back down the long stairs to go outside to drink from their official DORA cup. Lastly, the Howling Bird has an extensive outdoor patio. Why would the public want to pay a higher price for their drink when they could enjoy their beverage sitting on Howling Bird's outdoor patio? This idea of a DORA in North Canton has led to a waste of thousands of citizen tax dollars. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to new business. Item 6A, an ordinance for the designation of projects for the use of the ARPA funds. Administration, do you have, this is going to be postponed?
Yeah, we're requesting that this be postponed. We're waiting on pending federal spending guidelines that were supposed to be out in the next 2 weeks. And so we'll report back to you then. Once we get the first official preliminary indicators from U.S. Treasury.
All right, let me defer to our parliamentarian / clerk. Do we need to table this or can we just move on?
So we want to do a motion to postpone until X
17th.
requirements have been met. So in this case, it would be until administration has received federal spending guidelines.
All right, the clerk has nicely summarized the entire motion. I'll make a motion that we postpone item 6A. Is there a second?
Stroya seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Very good. Let's move on then to item 6B. Like to make a motion. Let me ask you, Ben. I think we need to waive committee reports for this, correct?
Yes, so we need to waive Council Rule 24.
Okay, let me first of all make a motion to waive Council Rule 24, requiring a committee report for ordinance number 28-21. Is there a second?
Stroya seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
This is not 28-21.
Okay. What is the correct ordinance number then?
I believe this will be 35.
Okay.
We'll double check right now.
All righty. Let's take a pause here for a moment.
Thanks for noticing, Ben. Very easy to fix. Today's world.
36. I was off by 1. 36.
All right. I have made a motion that we suspend council rule regarding a committee report for ordinance 36-21. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Stroya seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Very good. Thank you. Opposed? All right.
Sorry, 37.
Let's get it right, guys. This is important.
Do I hear 38?
No, it is important.
Let's do this one more time then.
Do I hear 38?
I'm going to make a motion.
Wait. Ben, are you sure? You need a little bit more time? We can wait.
Yeah, it is 37. 36 has already been passed on emergency. That's why it was off the docket. So
Okay.
it is 37.
All right. Very good. Revolt will make Revolt moves for ordinance 37-21 that the requirement for a committee report be waived.
Stroya seconds.
Stroya seconds. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
I heard some background TV or something.
There's some background TV. All right. May I have a motion to read by title only? First reading, ordinance number 37-21.
Stroya moves.
Is there a second?
Stroya seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Very good. Clerk?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton through the Board of Control to enter into an agreement for the settlement of a pending court action and purchase of the real property located at 1206 North Main Street in the city of North Canton, Stark County, Ohio, permanent parcel number 9207429, at a cost not to exceed $950,000, which includes costs associated with closing, and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Patrick?
Yes, thank you. So this is the parcel in the block that we were trying to acquire in order to, at some point, be considering the construction of a police fire building. Council has already authorized and we have acquired 3 of those 4 properties. This is the 4th one. So this one took a little bit longer. We had a circuitous route that it took us to court under potential eminent domain action led to a mediation, and then finally to an agreed settlement. And before you is the settlement of that litigation, and then the purchase of this property. So the purchase price is actually $895,000, but we've included potential associated costs with closing at that number. As far as the overall viewpoint of what we authorized, what council authorized the administration to, in essence, finance. We went to the bond market, as you know, a year ago or so. We financed $2.9 million, and we've come in significantly under budget on the acquisition costs for these 4 properties. So we think that this will, once we get it signed, sealed, delivered, there's a number of steps of, till we get to the closing date. But the first thing was we have 10 days to get this through City Council. That's why we have asked for an emergency clause on this one. And then from there, we'll set a closing date, and that should be done within the next 45 days.
Does council have any questions? Seeing none, then, may I have a motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance 37-21?
Stroya moves.
Is there a second?
Old seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Very good. May I have a motion to suspend the rules for ordinance number 37-21?
Stroya moves.
Old
Is there a
seconds.
second? Fold seconds. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? And finally, may I have a motion? May I have a motion to adopt under the rules as suspended? Ordinance number 37-21.
Stroya moves.
Old seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? That concludes this matter. And that concludes our agenda this evening. Before we adjourn, we have these council meetings scheduled on the calendar. Regular council meeting on the 10th, 17th, public hearing on the Main Street zoning changes at 6:30. On the 17th, a committee of the whole. The 24th, city council, and no meeting for Monday, the 31st, Memorial Day. Are there any corrections that we need to make to this agenda at this time? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Bolts moves.
Stroya moves. Stroya seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? That concludes our evening. Thank you.
Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you, City Council.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.